Hey y'all, in this video we're going to cover the advanced SQL Server topic of cursors. We'll start off with the why, and then I'm going to show you step by step how to use them. Let's get to work and into the why you would use a cursor. In my line of business, I do a lot with data quality, and I have to produce data quality scorecards, and they look something like this. And each data quality scorecard really basically goes through a list of views one by one, and I get a total record count and I get a failed record count from each one of those views, and I have to insert that data along with today's date and the rule name into a table to be retrieved by a program like Tableau to present to the business. To do something like that, I cannot get that done with a select statement. And that's really the differentiator you want to use to understand whether a cursor is applicable for something that you're trying to do. Can you get it done with a select statement? Then you should use a select statement. If you can't, and you need to do something row by row with a data set or a record set, that is a cursor. Now we're going to get into the how to do it. And now let me walk you through an example of a cursor. And it's my style to really spend more time showing you how it works than to have you watch me type. So I've already have this all typed out in SQL Server, and I'm going to switch over right now to that SQL Server SSMS instance so that we can work through this. You'll see that I've simply started off letting SQL know what database we're going to be using. We're using AdventureWorks. And then you'll see the cursor laid out here. Now, I've got a simple example because I really want you to grasp and understand this so that you can use it and apply it in your job. There are 5 main areas of the syntax of a cursor. First, we have to declare it. Then we open it. We do our fetching. We close it. And we deallocate it. And if we look through this, and again, I'll just kind of slowly go through this. We start with the declare. Then you'll see the open. We have a bunch of stuff that happens here. And this is where all the work takes place, is in the fetch. And then we close it and we deallocate it. All right, let's go through it bit by bit. All right, so the declaration. We have got to start by telling SQL what this cursor is going to look like, right? So we say declare and we give it a name. I'm calling this scorecards reports cursor. Then we say cursor 4, and then we give it a select statement. I'm going to run the select statement because this select statement actually defines what this cursor is going to look like. And you'll see that there are 4 rows of data and 3 columns. Now, a cursor can be much bigger than this, but for simplicity's sake in this example, I'm using a small record set. After we have this record set, we're going to go ahead and declare homes for each one of these columns or fields. Because when we start fetching data from the record set, we're going to say, grab this data and put it here so that we can work with it. We need a home for it. We need a residence. That residence is a variable. So for each one of these columns, we're going to have a variable name. For rule name, I just simply call it @rule_name. For view name is @view_name. And test field is @test field. So this is the declaration part of our cursor. Now we move on to open the cursor. Well, that was easy. Open and restate your cursor name. Okay, this is the meat of where the work gets done. It's in the fetch. So what fetch does is it looks at wherever the row pointer is. So when you're getting started, it's going to be at the very first row. And we're going to say fetch from our cursor into, and then we list out our variables. All right. So what will happen is it's going to go to row 1. It's going to say, I want to get this rule name into here, this view name into here, this test field into here. And so it will populate customer email address into this variable, view name into this variable, and test field into that, or the string test into that variable. Now, what happens is we're going to use a SQL function called fetch status to allow us to know if there's what's happening with this array of data. And we say while fetch status equals 0. Well, fetch status equals 0 anytime SQL does a fetch and it gets something. If it doesn't get something, if there's no data, it returns a -1. So while we have a 0, it's going to do some work. And we have a begin and an end. So what is the work? I'm going to have it print the variable rule name separated by a bar, then the variable view name separated by a bar, and then the variable test field. So it's going to print this stuff out until we get a fetch status that's not equal to 0. Now, after it prints, the next thing that we want to do, we want to go from record 1 to record 2. The way we do that is with a fetch next statement. So inside of this while begin end, we do a fetch next from our cursor. So the variables will then have row 2, we'll go to fetch next, row 3, fetch next, row 4, and it will do this until it gets to no data. When it gets done with that, it gets to the end, and then we will close the cursor and deallocate it. Closing basically says, hey, I'm not open for fetching anymore. Deallocating says, poof, I'm out of memory and all those resources are free or freed up for the system to use. Let's run this guy and see what happens. What you see here is the output of our cursor. And so we declared it, we opened it, we did a fetch. We did 4 different fetches and put that data into the variables and printed them line by line. And then we closed and deallocated. Now you'll see that this output is from the cursor where it looks very different than if we just do a select, which is our typical result set that we get from working with data. All right, so that's a result set. This is actually a printout of our cursor. And just to show you a little bit, so we could say print hello and plus, and we go like that, and see you get this hello in there. So I just wanted to show you a little bit of how that worked. Now, I want to spend just a little bit more time about going over the fetch status. So fetch status, while fetch status equals 0 is a good thing. What happens if we get no data in our cursor to begin with? So I'm going to pull off this comment and say, select the data where 1 equals 2. Well, 1 never equals 2, so we should get an empty record set. So do you see that? That's an empty record set. And if I run the cursor now, you'll see nothing happens. Well, why? Well, the reason is when we ran the record set, you see this -1 here? That is the fetch status that we receive when there's no data in the array. And so there's nothing to do because we said while fetch status equals 0, well, it never got to equal 0 because there was no data. And then let me put it back. Let's put the data back. So let me comment this out again and run it. And you'll see now fetch status equals 0 and it went through the cursor. Let's put a couple more in here. Well, let's look at the fetch status as it goes through each record. That's what this guy is. Boom, 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 0, 0, 0, 0. So as it went through, the fetch status was 0. It got to the end and it quit. Well, why did it quit? Well, let's put one more print fetch status. And so 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. The fetch next returns a -1. It ends. We printed the fetch status. We close it. We deallocate it. Game over. Well, there you have it. There's your cursor. Remember, if you can get the job done with a select, use a select. Otherwise, use a cursor. I hope this helps you. God bless.